Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to Aurelia's virtual book club. Today we are talking to Ashley Capes about
Hi,
the City of Masks. So,
thank you.
Ashley is a professor in Australia of English and has written poetry and won awards and all sorts of cool stuff. So, you want to tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, can I downgrade myself a touch
Sure.
from um, from professor to teacher, although there's overlap.
Oh,
Um,
I tend to use the terms interchangeably sometimes.
yeah, I wasn't sure whether that was interchangeable or whether you'd just given me a PhD, uh,
No, I
which
would
is
never
fine.
force a PhD on anybody.
Um, yeah, so I've been writing since I was in high school, as lots of us, I guess, do start writing then. I guess lots of angsty poetry that eventually became, I hope, less angsty. Um, and I didn't actually start fiction as seriously as poetry until sort of 5 years ago, and the switch was interesting because one, I feel, I hope this is not sort of going out on a limb too much, but one is very much about the compression of language and meaning because
hmm
of that space issue with poetry.
Yeah,
Um, and obviously one perhaps more about narrative, and that was a big switch in some ways,
yeah, I can imagine. Um,
but not unpleasant. Just a different set of thinking for some aspects.
yeah,
Yeah. The whole time, I've been trying to get better at writing. I've been, studying different things. I used to work for a gallery. I used to work in music retail. I eventually did teacher training and training in media.
hmm
Um, as evidenced by my inability to make Hangouts work. Um,
I think it's more Google's fault. um, so, so tell us a little bit about what sort of sparked your first idea that eventually became the City of Masks. Okay, hold on a second. Ashley got dropped. So, in the void, while we wait for Ashley to come back, um, I have started, but not finished, City of Capes. Um, I am loving it so far. I think it's really fascinating how the different characters are so immersed in their particular um, sort of strata of the city. There are the characters who are stuck in the like sewer, and then the characters that are in the highest of the like ruling class things. I don't know. I like when different socioeconomic status characters all have to work together at some point to solve a problem. So you're back.
in my back.
Yeah.
Okay, I've tried a
Awesome.
different I've tried a different modem and a different connection, and fingers crossed.
All right. Um,
This is going to be a rough
so
editing job for you, isn't it?
I will survive. Um, so tell us a bit about what sparked the original idea that eventually became the City of Masks.
I'm pretty sure it was traveling. My wife and I saved up for 1,000 years to go to Italy. Um,
Ooh, I love Italy. It's awesome.
I was blown away. And it was, it was worth all the debt that we returned with.
Yeah.
It was just, yeah, um, yeah, it was amazing. We were in a sort of a southern part in Amalfi on the coast there,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd read a little bit about it, and I'd heard how the historical city of Amalfi slid into the sea during a tsunami,
Mm.
hundreds of years ago. And I like the idea of a city sort of perched on the coast. And I remember seeing a photo in a photographic shop of the waves sort of pummeling this city of Amalfi, like the present day one, and the waves were just way up the sort of side of the road. It's got all those narrow, winding roads
Mm-hmm.
um, where you think two cars can't even pass without smashing their side mirrors. Um, and it just that caught my imagination, I guess, and that was the start of the setting. Um, and I guess in terms of the conflict, um, that might have been more rather than one specific event or place, more of an amalgamation of all the sort of fantasy stories that I'd read over many years and all the parts that excited me as a reader.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I attempted to sort of work a story around what excited me. Um,
Yeah.
that old chestnut, whereby the writer should attempt to write something they'll enjoy, and in theory, the reader will too.
Well, I think it's worked.
Cool,
One
thank you.
person's opinion counts.
It totally
Um,
does. Absolutely.
so what was one of the most fascinating tidbits that you learned as you were doing some of the research? Or did you do any research? Maybe you made it all up.
Um,
That's the awesome thing about fantasy, right?
but yeah, there's a lot of room there for me to make things up. Um, not possibly the language, um,
Mm-hmm.
and I should have known this in terms of my own sort of encounters with the language anyway. But
Mm-hmm.
just the amount of, I guess, root words in Latin and Italian that are obviously, English is used, and English being that big sort of melting pot of
Hybrid,
many different
yeah.
languages. Yeah. I found that really interesting, and I found it really useful in the way that if I needed a word for, um, well, actually, one of my villains, so Lupo, which is Italian for wolf,
Mm-hmm.
um, I should have known that, but I went searching for, animal words to
Mm-hmm.
use as this name, and it was just, sort of, why didn't I think of that automatically? Like, I should have known that. Not that I speak Italian, but I, did a little bit of research and learnt a few.
Uh-oh. Well, hmm. We'll get him back. Patience, patience. Hmm. I think it's really cool that the sort of setting inspiration was Amalfi, Italy. I would never have guessed. Um, but Italy is so beautiful. Um, I would love to go back and spend a summer in Tuscany if I ever can. You're back again! Yay!
Google hates me.
I'm sorry.
It's not your fault. I didn't expect Google would be this vicious.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, maybe Google plays favorites somehow.
You're the favorite.
Yeah.
I'm the non-favorite.
No,
Did
I've had my fair share of hangout troubles. But I think it
did
cut you off at the right in the middle of the end of that uh
so before the
sort
rambling?
of
Good.
yeah. Um so tell us a little about like your process and how long it took you between your original idea and actually starting to write. Um yeah.
I think it's a long one.
Mhm.
Um, Obviously not every project is the same, but for this one it was a long one. I think 2011, September-ish is when we are in Italy, where I got the sort of the sparks, and um, it probably wouldn't have been until um, late 2012 that I actually started writing it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that sort of simmering time, I guess, is sort of all important. I guess I don't always leap right into something, and I don't always have even that shorter link between ideas. In that, if I start a new project, it's usually that I've looked back over some older ideas and something has finally matched up or come together, because most of the
Mhm.
stories that I finish seem to be the combination of multiple ideas,
Mhm.
some of which I didn't know went together until I did, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I have a story that's like that.
Yeah,
Um,
that long lead in time and two
yeah,
things suddenly come together unexpectedly, um, and it's exciting.
yeah. Yeah, I had an idea for a story based off a really crazy, weird dream I had. And then, like, a year and a half later, I was driving with my dad through, like, New Mexico and Arizona near the Grand Canyon. And that is where I figured out the setting, and it, like, would never have happened if I hadn't been on that road trip. So,
Yeah, you don't know
yeah,
necessarily where, yeah, something's going to come up,
yeah,
and that's exciting when those things come together, because feel like um, you feel like your mind is sort of on your side, which is very
yeah.
different to how it feels when I'm editing sometimes.
Hmm.
You know,
Editing
where
for
I'm
me
not.
is easier. That's interesting.
Okay, I find editing fun, but I find myself second guessing myself more than when I'm in a first draft.
Hmm.
So it's like my mind is sort of giving me a hard time, whereas when those ideas are coming together, it's as if my mind is working for me without me having to do any, pushing.
Yeah,
So the first draft
I'm
is
exactly
is
the opposite.
okay.
Yeah. Um, so what was it like discovering the story as you wrote it?
Um, I think that's part of the fun
Mm-hmm.
of a first draft for me. Um, I remember a writer, someone I wish I could remember, he said something fairly flippant, but that sounded a little bit like me. And he said, in terms of outlines, why would I want to write the same book twice?
Mm-hmm.
And I know what he's saying, but I also disagree in terms of. Let me start again. When he says that, it sounds like he's
think Google really does hate him. Um, it's always interesting to hear how people's processes are different and um, the different ways that stories come to be. For me, it's all scattered and bits and pieces until the end when it finally makes sense. Um, I don't write in order, so like stuff that happens at the end, I have no idea how to actually end up there. But hopefully, if you ever read anything I write, then you'll not have to deal with that crazy mess that is what things are right now. And you'll just get the full story in complete, logical, straightforward order. um, ah, I hear you again. So we missed your
Hi
answer.
again.
You were telling us about the quote about the outlines and not wanting to write the book twice and how you don't agree with it, and we missed all of the how you don't agree with it. Are you there? We can't hear you. Ah, now we can
Hello?
hear you.
I just, this time before I logged in, I turned my camera off, and I'm hoping that that's what was happening, that Hangouts keeps sending requests for me to activate
Mm,
or change the camera. I've tried to cut the camera in a preemptive strike,
okay.
and maybe that'll work.
So
Maybe. Good, we're still there.
I'm still here, you're still here. um, do you want to just tell us again a little what you were saying about outlines and stuff?
Yeah, to recap, I had mentioned an author, I can't remember who it was, and he said, in terms of outlining, why would I want to read, why would I want to write the same book twice? And I felt that that was a comment on the writer's process with really heavy outlining, very
Hmm.
step by step, chapter by chapter, and that makes sense to me in that way. However, my outlines are more open and beginning, middle, end. You know, I have an end point, and I'm sort of discovering within that framework. So if something amazing comes along somehow when two characters meet that I never thought would meet, or whatever, I'm more flexible with my outline that way, and it keeps things fresh and exciting for me during the writing
Hmm.
process. So when he's saying, "Why do I want to write the same book twice?" that sounds like he's having a dig at a really detailed outlining process, and it's sort of not necessarily fair, because the worst advice I think a writer can give another writer is write like I do.
Yeah.
You know, you want to find your own process, and so I understand what he's saying, but I'd feel that way if I detailed really, really heavily, but I don't,
Hmm.
and that keeps me, yeah, involved.
Yeah. So how is it different writing a novel versus writing poetry in terms of how you get your ideas from your head to like the page?
Excellent, tough question. I think with poetry, there's a certain amount of um, spontaneity if the poem happens to be image,
Hmm.
I guess, imagistic more than um, experimentation with language, or if it is a narrative-based poem, which I find difficult. It'll start from an image, particularly with haiku or just a shorter image-based poem. Like if I remember driving past, I think just some flowers on the side of the road that looked like the kind of flowers you'd see in a garden, but it was just
Mhm.
on a highway, and it struck me that these flowers looked like the kind of flowers you'd see a neighbour watering all the time, but these flowers were no one's flowers. Um, they were just there, just doing their thing in the gutter, and that sort of triggered something. And I later went and wrote a piece, just a little haiku on that one. So often it's that there's a trigger of an image,
Mhm.
um, or if I'm feeling a bit agitated with something like um, we have morning shows here in Australia that are pretty close in tone and structure to US morning shows, and one of them is called Sunrise, and one of them is called Today, and they're very interchangeable,
Mhm.
um, and they have a very sort of predictable gender sort of like Battle of the Sexes is a popular theme,
Okay.
which is kind of boring and predictable, but um, I saw that, it bugged me, and I went on this little rant, and that eventually became a poem too. So I think for me, poetry.
And we lost him again. Internet gremlins. Tisk tisk. Hmm. All right, I think you're back again.
I'm getting good at reloading this thing. So I'm not sure how much I got out, but I think I try to finish with poetry is quicker. I can get them out quicker because I'm responding
Okay.
to a stimulus, and
Mhm.
fiction takes more forethought because I'm planning narratives and you know putting characters against each other.
Mhm.
So that's slower.
Yeah. Well, I think I just have one last question.
It'll probably take us 20 minutes to get through it.
Hopefully not. Um, what should we be most excited to learn as we read the book? Since not all of us might have. I've started it, I haven't finished it, but um, I had to force myself to put it down so I wouldn't be like asking for spoilers.
I
Um,
understand.
so what should we be most excited for?
I hope. I hope that that I hope that people enjoy this setting, which we've talked a little bit about,
Hmm.
because um, I do like the world building aspect to that. I just hope I don't go too far, but I do hope the setting is almost its own character.
Hmm.
Um, the city of Anaskar, sort of, it's got. I hope it's got some personality, and I again also hope that I guess related to the setting. And I'm not quite sure I should call it system, but the magic system or the magic, as in the great masks, the
Hmm.
bone masks. I hope that learning more about them as the series goes on is another sort of thing to look forward to, because I'm always fascinated by the idea of the way we as humans give a lot of meaning and um, not quite sentence, but we put a lot into objects as
Hmm.
humans. I think we invest a lot into them, and that's where the sort of bone masks come from. So I hope they um, spark some interest.
Hmm.
And I feel bad for not saying the characters, but them
That's
too.
okay. Um, Well, thank you. And everyone listening, I will see you next time.
Thank